Good morning, everybody. My name is Ursula, and I'm assistant in OH Boost project, under which name we are hosting today's webinar. A short introduction: OH Boost, One Health Boost project is the initiative that aims to develop to strengthen the research and innovation excellence, as well as to improve the management capacities of Estonian University of Life Sciences and University of Tartu in the area of One Health. And this is happening thanks to our collaboration with top partners, University of Milan, and our guests today, University of Helsinki. The project is financed from the Horizon Europe program and will last till the end of 2025. And as you hopefully remember, today we have webinar in the topic organizing shared life science research infrastructures. And to dig more into this topic, we asked our top partners to make this topic closer to us, to bring different perspective, different aspects. And our wonderful guest will share with you today their expertise, their experience in the topic of the webinar. And that's why from University of Helsinki, we are hosting today Tiina Avomaa, Maria Vartiainen, Marko Peura, and Harri Nurmi. So each of our guests will share their perspective on the topic. If you have any questions, just don't feel free to raise your hand by using the reaction tool in the Zoom, or you can freely write your question in the chat, and hopefully our guest will provide you the answer. So this is everything from my side. Welcome everybody once more, and our guests, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning from my side as well. I suppose I'm the first one to start, so I'll just try to share my slide and see how it goes. So I thought that I'll actually start the seminar by telling a bit more also from a wider university perspective and perhaps slightly from a national level perspective, that what it means to run the research infrastructures or manage the development of research infrastructures, to be more precise at the university context. So my specific task, if you look at the short bio, I'm more or less responsible for this governance-related processes at the university level on how we develop, where we commit to, and things like that related to research infrastructures. It's, of course, life science is a very large area at Helsinki, but then, of course, in addition to that, there are also natural science and social science and humanities-related infrastructure. So I'll give you an overview of how we develop this whole package at the university. So just to give a bit of an idea of the scope of University of Helsinki in this respect. So if we consider the infrastructure landscape in Finland, and especially these larger national and international infrastructure entities, then University of Helsinki is the widest or the organization that has the widest participation in various fields and in specific projects. So nationally, we quite often mention these S3 roadmap infrastructures, meaning the European Strategy Forum for RIs, which is this pan-European organ that actually tries to manage the whole European landscape. And out of 24 that we have in Finland, we are at Helsinki involved more or less in 19 of those, so nearly all of them. And we coordinate nationally half of these. And of course, in addition, these are by and large rather new infrastructures. Of course, there have been decades of cooperation, for instance, with CERN and the European Space Agency and things like that. So we've seen it for a long time that if we want to be a top-level university, to also attract talent to the university, students, researchers, and also try to somehow keep the talent working at the university. Of course, research can't really function without research infrastructures. And so they go really closely hand in hand, that we have to develop both the research and the supporting infrastructures that are making research possible, basically. And that's why if one would look at our strategy, feel free to do so if you want, but you can see that there also the research and research infrastructures very much go hand in hand. And so perhaps what we started from also at Helsinki, but I suppose anywhere who are more involved in developing these infrastructure entities, is to actually try to put a definition to it, that what they really are. And so I'm not going to go through that whole list, but if you have a look at it and think about the different kinds of components that are included, it is quite clear that actually the definition of infrastructure can't be very limiting. So nearly everything can be, to some extent, thought of as a research infrastructure. Of course, then there are the perhaps boundary conditions, for instance, for libraries or information technology infrastructure or computing infrastructure in general, that whether it's a specific research infrastructure or if it is universities' general infrastructure that is also supporting research. Those are perhaps important distinctions at that stage when you have to make prioritizations or think about the resource usage, that from which kind of sources do which kind of components get their funding. But in any case, especially when you have a wider area university, it's important to keep also this definition quite wide, so you don't hamper the development by mistake. And of course, these infrastructures very much operate like onions in a way. When you think about the structure, that what sort of services they provide to different levels. So actually, okay, we are taking part in these large international and national level infrastructures, but when you go down to the actual equipment or actual databases, actual softwares, actual people who are doing the work, it's our local infrastructure that only has a national and international context. So that is something to bear in mind, that it's very rare that you would have a specific infrastructure developed and tailored, for instance, just only for international activities or only for national or local activities. So to spare the resources, you have to think about the whole scope. This is how we see our landscape, so to speak, at the present, that how these different kinds of large pan-European acronyms actually relate to. So our university is very strong in life sciences, in social sciences, humanities, and also in atmosphere and earth system sciences. We are more or less the leading place in Europe, and that also shows that we have quite a lot of these pan-European initiatives also that are having their headquarters in the Helsinki region, that have been developed by us quite a bit. But this only means that when we develop these as a whole, of course, it's important to also look at the boundaries, that who are doing what and where, so that we actually optimize our resources. And this is one of the things that is very important, especially when the scope and the complexity of the infrastructure field gets more and more elaborate, in a sense that you actually also follow that what is being done and where. so that at least in Finland, it's quite common the case that the resources available for universities, they aren't all the time expanding. So it is very important to also see that where can we actually do combining work with other organizations. And this is why I by no means suggest that you start remembering all these acronyms and all these partners and others. This is just to show as a general illustration that, okay, we are quite a lot involved, or quite heavily actually involved, or even on a European scale, but it certainly doesn't mean that we would be doing these things by ourselves. Meaning that we always have partners, and when you have partners, then you all, of course, have to negotiate with those partners that who takes care of what bit in the running of a certain infrastructure, that how does it go nationally. So it is quite a complex puzzle, so to say, to keep an eye on that. How our infrastructures are doing, what should they be developing, what are our faculties or university leadership thinking about the directions that they are taking and things like that. And of course, in addition to these national, international, very large entities, there has to be a strong connection to what the faculties themselves are doing in their own research, in their own teaching. And there, as a substructure, so to say, we also have these different kind of research laboratories, core facilities, what you will hear much more in the later talks. But also in there, we have the distinction that if it is a research infrastructure, it needs to be open, at least within the university, at least within some sort of principles. It doesn't mean a free for all, that everyone can come and use as they please and no costs incurred and nothing like that. No. That's not how the thing goes. But there has to be some sort of a mechanism to allow for people to actually use these infrastructures also outside the main hosting unit. So for instance, if a professor is very successful in getting supplementary funding to purchase some equipment or something like that, but he or she keeps it to his or her group so that no one else can actually use it. So in our definition, that is not a research infrastructure. That's just a bunch of equipment on someone's table. So we are not as a university really interested in developing those, because you always have to have some sort of a component in openness. And how we develop these local infrastructures then is we have these more or less loosely thematic centers that have some sort of a responsibility for coordinating the activities within a certain theme. So we have HiLIFE, which you will hear a lot more in the coming talks. Then for this Earth System Sciences business, we have INAR, which is led by Marko Peura and his crew at Kumpula campus. They have a whole host of ESFRI or pan-European activities concentrated there and at the Viki campus as well. And then we have a separate center for, at our city center campus, we have this Helsinki Institute for Social Sciences and Humanities, which takes then all of these SSH areas, that how they are developing. And why it is very important that we actually try to connect all levels of the university to the infrastructure actions. So for instance, at our current financial model, how we are doing this is that there is no specific separate strategic purse, so to speak, for the upkeep of these large infrastructures. They are financed by the host faculties. So of course, that also means that especially in these research infrastructure intensive units, they take up a sizable portion of the resources that the faculties are spending overall. So that is always a question, that how we arrange the commitment of the university at all levels to actually enable the development and the life cycle planning in the longer term. And especially perhaps in the Finnish system, one specialty are these national level fundings that are coming with quite heavy proportions of universities' own funding, especially for equipment. And of course, you can say that, okay, we get 70% of the money from the academy, but it still means that 30% of $1 million is a significant chunk from a certain unit. So it always entails longer term planning on what is developing, what should be developing, what should perhaps be emphasized more, things like that. And this is basically what I slightly already mentioned, that what we are especially promoting, we have done it already in the past quite a bit, but perhaps concentrating even a bit more, that what is the actual life cycle of these infrastructures? That where are they going? Are they on the preparatory phase? Are they at their peak production? Are they perhaps starting to decline somewhat a bit? And these are all things that at the university level, especially, you need to take into account when you're developing the infrastructure activities, that what is on the rise, what is on the decline, how does it go? And especially one important thing is that when you are planning something new, you might end up in this, let's say, pyramid standing on its head sort of a thing, that you are always adding and adding and adding fixed costs. If nothing is ever considered that, okay, maybe we let this activity go, then you're all the time increasing the resource needs. And as I mentioned, we have no infrastructure if it isn't open. Of course, we are not alone in this boat, and we have quite a lot of different kinds of guidelines from the European level, for instance. In addition to our own research infrastructure program, for instance, EU level, there's a charter for access. Then LERU, this League of European Research Infrastructures, where University of Helsinki is a member, they have their recommendations. And of course, we try to align our principles as close as possible to these more pan-European principles. But one thing which I also already mentioned, that, okay, the openness is an important criterion, but it does not mean what it might typically mean as an open access thing, that it's free access, and that is certainly not the case. And especially with life science infrastructures, it is most commonplace that the users do take part in somehow covering the costs of the operation. And overall, what we, of course, recommend for our infrastructures is to take all kinds of activities related to open science as much as possible to their activity portfolio as a whole. So that means not only access, but also thinking about data management, data storage, how to actually provide access to the data and the physical infrastructure. But of course, you have to always remember that infrastructures do engage in activities that by nature are not always open. RDI-related things, for instance, you can go out and post them online wherever you want. So there's always a balance act, that not everything can be open, but what can be open should be. And one thing, of course, especially when we have a large university with several different infrastructures in various fields and different kinds of equipment, one recurring situation or even problem to some extent is where to find the up-to-date information. And of course, at Helsinki, we have several kinds of ways on how to actually promote our infrastructures or give out information that where they can be found. And the challenge here is to actually keep all of these up to date with minimal overlapping work. I suppose it's the same with just about any organization. And so this is just actually my final slide. So what we are always trying to do is we combined this, let's say, university level thinking to actually what the researchers are doing, where that research fields are going, where the teaching is going, to actually try to have a comprehensive package also in terms of our research infrastructures. And even so that when we ensure that we are committed to the upkeep and development of these entities at all levels, then perhaps the life cycle and cost analysis or cost-related other practices, they are all in line, and we know where we are spending our resources, and also we have a firm commitment that okay, these are the places where we want to spend our resources in. And of course, we are certainly not alone. Tiina will mention about the Una activities. I'm personally involved in this other acronym in the last bullet, which is Retrain Plus. We are trying to actually create some sort of a, let's say, study program for both academic students and professionals running research infrastructures on different kinds of issues, on how to actually run them more efficiently, perhaps run them better in a way. So it's always important to remember cooperation in all the aspects related to research infrastructures. So this was all from me. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Marko. We have any questions from the audience? There's something specific that catched your attention? I don't see, I don't hear. Also, there is no questions in the chat. Maybe later something will come back, or it was just so comprehensive that there is nothing to add. So thank you once more. And the next person, I think it's Tiina, yeah? The Tiina, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you, Marko. My name is Tiina Avomaa, and I'm a senior advisor. I work at the research services in the team called Support for Research Administration. And I have been involved in our common project in the Una.Resin network, and the project was called Una.Resin. It took place during the years of 21 to 24. And I will only explain one particular task that we had, which was the mapping of infras. And here's, you probably have heard about Una.Resin a bit before, so I will not go through everything about the network. This is just the map showing the partners that were involved in the infra mapping. And after that, we have already have additional universities added to the network. So 3 universities have been coming to the network since then. The project is here described as a whole, the whole resin project. So I will not go through all of the goals here, but of course the aims were to strengthen the research and innovation areas within the Una.Resin and to bring some synergy into the actions involved in that. But we will go now deeper to the objectives. So the objectives related to One Health infra mapping are mainly the first 2 ones on these slides, and especially the first one. So it was to pool our collective research strengths and infrastructure and resources, by developing these shared strategies and priorities and agendas to scale our interdisciplinary excellence and tackle society's biggest challenges together. So quite a big challenge, but of course it was chopped down to smaller tasks. And we had some common methodology throughout the projects. So in order to achieve the objectives of each of these work packages, the Una.Resin projects followed a common methodology. So that was like development of shared strategies, agendas and policies, following definition, scope, mapping of policies and assets, stakeholder consultation, and identification of barriers and enablers of research and infrastructure cooperation. Then we have the development of an action plan to implement the shared priorities. Then implementation of pilot actions, and then still evaluation of pilot actions. So in the infra mapping, we had questionnaires that were aimed for the coordinators of the infrastructures, and the infra mapping questionnaires were distributed in the universities during the autumn of 2021. Each university had their own freedom to choose how to select the infras to answer these questions, and also of to select the infras to be included in the list. So the questionnaire was it was moderately long, and this is just one example, just to show how we were like dividing these into different categories. And every single infra that ended up on the list had to fill the questionnaire individually, so that we have this whole questionnaire for each of the infras that are there. Some universities decided to do it so that they sent this questionnaire to a lot of infra coordinators, and then kind of emphasizing them to answer. Not all answered, but we got fairly good amount of answers. And some universities decided to do it on like interview type of thing, so that they would set up a meeting with the coordinators and then use this questionnaire as a basis of interview, and then wrote down the answers from there. So this table shows the relation of the mapping to some other activities of the project. So the infra-list mapping was only one of the results, and it should be looked together with these other results. For example, at the same time, there was this mapping of different infra strategies and analyzing of that, so that it goes always hand in hand together with the infrastructure mapping. As a result, we didn't have just the actual list, the huge Excel of infras, but also we looked at what kind of obstacles and barriers there were that infra coordinators or universities had recognized while doing this questionnaire and the mapping. And the analysis of the obstacles that could hamper the collaboration with other universities of Una network revealed that about half of the infrastructures mapped declared that there were no obstacles, or they didn't answer the question, and if it was not answered, it was considered that they didn't have any particular obstacles worth mentioning. And about half of the answers had declared some kind of obstacles. I will not read through the entire list here, but just to mention a few. So the accessibility is an obstacle related to access to software, instruments, and infrastructures related to the infras. And there are also obstacles related to registration constraints, bureaucracy, mobility, and then there are restrictions due to legal rules, mainly intellectual property rules, or then regulatory rules like ethical compliance. And then constraints such as copyright and third parties' IP rights, and privacy and safety rules. Now that we are talking about One Health infrastructures, it is particularly important to note that in One Health area, there's the high clearance of ethical and privacy rights that are required in conducting experiments and valorization of research results. And then one barrier of limiting these sharing capacities is due to financial constraints and the lack of funds. So of course, always it comes down to money at some point. And within this analysis, barriers related to open data include the limited access or sharing capacities due to standards, interoperability and/or data storage or data protection, server security limitations, as well as internal procedures. And all of these then need to follow all ethical guidelines as well. And now that at least the barriers have been recognized, it then gives the possibility to try and find some common solutions for these. And last item on the list, there is the language. Nowadays, almost everything is in English, but not all. So, of course, we ended up noticing that in some universities, they tend to use the national languages in infra listings and also on the external websites. So in this infra listing, we have collected all the links to the infras and how their shared use is described on the web pages. And some universities only have them in national languages. So one of the kind of easier things how to enhance the collaborations would be just to translate all the pages to English or some other language that are more known in the network, or having like several languages there, quite preferably like to all the languages spoken in the network. And then some results, outcomes. So as a result of this mapping, in the list we have altogether 113 infras, but since some of those are actually list of lists themselves, the actual number of the shared infras is several hundreds. And when we looked at the quality of the list contains very high level unique infrastructures and world-renowned collections and laboratories. The list includes like equipment for biochemical, optical, structural analysis, sequencing and screening systems, tissue and culture facilities, number of animal facilities, high power computing facilities, and like dating techniques and prototyping services. So everything that you can just imagine in the One Health area. And then when we look at the scientific fields, the infras belong to really wide range of scientific fields, from medtech and biotech, medical sciences, but also ecology and climate sciences and astronomy. So really going all the way from down to earth to up to the space. And as the mapping was done in the manner that all universities were free to select the listed infras themselves, there are still many infras that were left outside of this list. So this is something that we need to keep in mind for possible update rounds, so that we should not just update the info that is now on the list, but really look into adding more infras to the list because they are still out there. And then for the future, what could be like the next steps then after this? And one that is worth underlining is that the sharing of data and data infrastructures has been the topic of the discussions from the infrastructures and multidisciplinary research point of view. So a need for enhancing processes of storing and sharing and accessing data has emerged since this listing or the mapping. And in fact, one of the main challenges addressed by the One Health area could be to connect different data sets, like from human, animal, and environmental data sets, and monitoring and time series. And combining these could produce these new and really interesting combinative data sets. And this could be something that we could consider doing in the future. And one thing that we noticed is that because all the infra lists within the universities were really different, so we made this blueprint. So it's like a plan of how we could make this complete common catalog from different universities that could be more easily updated. So we have the blueprint that was finished during 2023, and now we're just waiting how we could implement it. And of course, for the future, we would need some more funding to continue this infrastructure collaboration. And maybe the two main identified things for the future could be the common listing and then the sharing of data. So I thank you for listening to this bit, and if you have any questions, you can ask now or then maybe contact later. And I will now give the floor to my colleague Harri. Harri, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tiina.
Thank you, Tiina.
I see that there is a question from Kristi. So Kristi, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. You mentioned sharing the data and linking the interdisciplinary data. So how are you handling or managing the legal obstacles? Because I know that coming from the EU GDPR and all legislation in Estonia, it's pretty difficult to manage.
Yes. The sharing of data is still there in the future part. So we haven't done that yet. And that is, as you mentioned, and also it was there in the obstacle list, the identified obstacles is the IPR rights and such. Some legislation is, of course, EU-wide. So that is then making it easier for this network, since our parties are within EU. And I think we then need to just map if there are still some national laws that create some extra challenges, and how do we tackle those. But quite many of those legislative things are EU level. But that is a challenge for the future. I don't have answers to that yet when we are going through the next steps, and hopefully we will start looking at the sharing of data in international level. I will then maybe have some more news with that in the coming years, hopefully.
Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any more questions, or do we let Harri continue?
I don't see. Also in the chat, I don't see. So once more, thank you very much, Tiina. And Harri, now it's your turn.
Yes. Let's see that I can get this working properly. So, first of all, greetings from the snowy Finland. It has been coming like 20 centimeters since last night. The whole traffic in region is completely shut down almost. So, well, waiting for the summertime. So, my presentation basically continues where Marko left from his ones, since now we are going to deeper in one of these thematic areas, and I think this is the not the main topic, but at least mentioned in the title. So how the life science research infrastructures, I use the acronym LSRIs, are organized and managed in the University of Helsinki. So what needs to maybe say in the beginning is that the field of the life sciences in the University of Helsinki is scattered between the different faculties and also the independent institutes. So here in the my left-hand corner, there is a campus map of the Helsinki area, and the University of Helsinki has 4 different campuses. The city center, mainly for the social sciences and humanities, Meilahti campus for the medicine, Kumpula for the natural sciences, and then the Viikki for the life sciences. However, the life science research is conducted in all of these 3 campuses, so in Viikki, Kumpula, and Meilahti. And here are our faculties, which 4 of them, so the agriculture and forestry, biological and environmental sciences, pharmacy, and veterinary medicine are located in Viikki campus, Faculty of Medicine in Meilahti, Faculty of Science in Kumpula, and then we have the independent institute called HiLIFE. HiLIFE is a joint effort which has been established now 7 years ago, and there are listed these main actions what it's doing, and one of these are to coordinate the life science area research infrastructures. And inside the HiLIFE, there are these so-called joint activities, but there are also operative units that are mentioned in a very small font beneath the HiLIFE text. So the Institute of Biotechnology, Finnish Molecular Medicine Institute, and then the Neuroscience Center. And beside this, we also have the national or the Finnish Museum of the Natural History, which is then located. The actual location is in the city center, and all of these forms together the life science area in that sense. And why the role of HiLIFE here is so important is that especially in these LSRIs, they are coordinated and also in some level financed by the HiLIFE. But let me walk through this now, so how this is organized. So basically how University of Helsinki has organized this is that these LSRIs have been compiled under these currently 16 different infrastructure platforms, which are coming from the biodiversity collections that are like under this natural history museum, to the many different kind of omics, to all the way to the research station, including also then the very established ones like bioimaging and structural biology, which already have a European level status. So how these are then these currently 63 LSRIs, or in some level they are also called core facilities. So they are hosted or owned by either the HiLIFE's operative units, or then these 6 faculties and also the Natural Museum. So overall, the structure itself is relatively dynamic, and now since 2017, this has been operated in this way, and all the way or all the time, there's certain types of development to building the activities that these are producing, and their working models have been generated to resemble to each other more and more. So then this is another way then to show basically the same picture than the previous one. So that what we have to remember that these infrastructures or the LSRIs that we are now presenting here, they are not standing alone. Like Marko already mentioned, many of these infrastructures have very close connections, and they are networking, and they are partners, either in the Finnish Biocenter Finland course. Biocenter Finland has a long history which goes almost back to 20 years now, which is especially coordinating these different kind of biomedicine and biomolecular technologies. And then at the same time, we have a lot of these ESFRI type of connections. For example, the bioimaging, open screen, just to mention few. So like Marko said, is that these are not, even though they are working or the operations are happening inside the University of Helsinki, the networking is basically going through the national and also the international field. So this is one image now that I want to show here that basically explains that how do we see this type of a maturation? How do you become an LSRI? So in the very bottom, there is a so to speak the starting point where there are equipments, there are expertise, which is usually coming from the single or few research groups that needs to develop the concept of the research infrastructure. And then in the next step, basically there are two options. This is of course simplified picture, but either is service-based, where basically there are experts that are are giving the support based on the basically the funding. So in the sense that the users are paying for the either the machinery itself, or then for these experts to handle these different types of experiments. Then the other option in the other corner is this kind of scientific cooperation-based local research infrastructures, where the scientific cooperation is here indicated in the way that when there is going to be scientific output, publications, and so on, they will be co-authors of this achievement. But then, how these what are our in the LSRIs? What are then those? So then in this corner here, you can see that there is a HiLIFE RIA criteria. The RIA stands for the Research Infrastructure Assessment. So this is basically this kind of evaluation which is conducted to the certain or to applicant platforms and those LSRIs. So the few slides back where I showed you our current status, all of those infrastructure has been evaluated based on the criteria which is mentioned over there, and they are like with that external evaluation granted this kind of LSRI status. So coming from this very research group kind of activities here in the bottom, there is a different kind of paths to reach to the national and international level research infrastructures. And these steps are something that needs to be filled out in the sense, and this is especially in the University of Helsinki considers this in the life science field issue, since there the operations that these LSRIs are conducting are based usually in the service-based starting point, and then there are these criteria that, for example, the access policies and the user fees are conducted over those units. So overall, from this picture, the idea is that there needs to be a maturation from the starting point to reach out to the certain level where the maturation is enough to call this so-called an LSRI. Then I just want to show this picture. This now jumps a bit from the University of Helsinki point of view, but I just wanted to show this since University of Helsinki is not, of course, alone in the field in Finland, which is conducting a different kind of biomedical research in this sense. So altogether, this is where University of Helsinki as such is located there in the left-hand corner, together with the University Hospital and also then the Aalto University, which is located here in the capital region. There are other big universities in the different parts of Finland, Oulu in north, Eastern Finland University, and then Turku and Tampere. And they are basically, there are these local services which are very well connected international level, especially in the field of biomedicine with the Biocenter Finland coordination. But then the operations that are conducted in the University of Helsinki keeps inside these, so we have LSRIs that are part of the, for example, the Instruct and Open Screen and Eurobioimaging, which we heard later a bit more from the one unit point of view. So altogether, in the how we see this is that the LSRIs or the core facilities, they are not standing alone in the sense their users are coming also outside from their host organizations. They are coming national level, and they are also users coming outside from the Finland. Then Marko also mentioned something about the funding scheme of these, or how the operations are going in our research infrastructures. And I have this one graph here telling that actually the funding streams that are coming or which are required for the LSRIs, the function is coming from the many different sources. So I can just mention here that, for example, the rents which are consuming, especially in the field of life science, quite a lot. They are basically coming from those host units that were going through in the beginning. Then when we are the big infrastructure needs new devices and equipments. Then in the national scale, the main funding organism is the Research Council of Finland, which have these kind of Finnish research infrastructure calls, where in the past few years now that the idea has been that if you are successful in the call, you will get this for this equipment purchases mainly 70% from the Research Council of Finland, and then the host units will cover this 30%. And in some level also this HiLIFE RIA, which I will come then to the end, will support these infrastructures with some amount of funding. So then, especially in the LSRIs, the maintenance and the reagents can even take a major part from their activities. And over there then comes this user fees aspect, which is extremely important in the sense that, for example, liquid-based analysis methods, the user fees, basically they are to keep the equipment running, at least the customers will pay the reagents in the sense. But then is the manpower issue, and there the role of HiLIFE and this coordinated strategical funding, which is coming after this RIA process, it's in this field it's important. So well, I will come still to that, the actual RIA process in the end. But over there, the idea is that the funding that HiLIFE is allocating to this research infrastructure that they function properly, it's evaluated by this external evaluation group, so that we can really be sure that the level that these LSRIs are performing is also considered at least in the national scale, but also in the international scale. However, we have to remember here that also the host units are conducting it, at least in some level, to the salaries depending on the infrastructure. So then I will briefly, I have 2 slides from this one. Why I brought this up is that this is something that has been now, this is a long process. This includes, for example, large scale user survey for the university university personnel, and this also have this kind of a letter of intent phase. So every time when this RIA is open, there is a possibility that new type of platforms, new type of technologies might come in after this careful evaluation. And after that, there are also the old current platforms needs to apply every time when the RIA is ongoing. And in the end, there are now, for example, in the late March, we had interviews of all of these platforms by the evaluation board here in Helsinki. So it's regularly repeated. First time in 2017 and then 2020, and now it's currently ongoing, even though we are almost reaching the goal. The idea is that this has been taken away from the university's own decision. Well, the decision is made, of course, the funding decisions inside the University of Helsinki, but the evaluation has been taken for the external international group, so that they can check the development of the current platforms in the biased way, so that we can be sure that there are the actions that these, or the operations that the LSRIs are conducting, they are top to the rate. We have assessment objectives, we have the evaluation criteria, which maybe I point out that the evaluation criteria, the first one is that it needs to be a relevance to the high quality research at the University of Helsinki. So this is done from the University of Helsinki perspective, since the funding that is given is the University of Helsinki's funding. So what they are basically then doing is that this is from this year's evaluation, is that they decide which platforms should have the funding for the term, which is again 4 years long. They will give the development and proposals to these platforms, and then they are even giving recommendations about the actual funding. So salary support, and then also the instrument support, which I also mentioned earlier. But this is not the only thing. So this basically gathers, there is an individual feedback for all of these platforms that are applying. But then we have the leadership of HiLIFE infrastructures, and overall the people who are developing these common aspects of the infrastructure functions. We are also getting proposals for the better organizing these, and then that what are the main development and focuses during this term. So basically now what we are getting from this evaluation group is some sort of roadmap for the development, which then will be compiled with our own University of Helsinki research infrastructure development actions. So in the sense, we see that they support each other, and then we have this external guidance to even make this work more efficiency and the better to serve our researchers. So basically that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harri. Do you have any questions?
I have one.
Yeah, please go.
Thank you. Very nice overview. It has been always puzzling for me to understand how the things work in different universities in the level of core facilities. Do I understand correctly that in in the University of Helsinki. The University of Helsinki as such decided this LIFE as an institute to be the one which is organizing and developing all those core facility levels, standards, everything, deciding, evaluation, or is it still something in the level of the highest, in I mean that University of Helsinki, somebody there is kind of organizing this in a let's say in a way of how these things should be done, and so how it's like how this is divided between the like the top level deciders and the institute level, and do I understand correctly that the LIFE, this institute has been kind of delegated to be the one in University of Helsinki to decide those? Can you comment that?
Yes, that's just the case. So HiLIFE has a mandate to develop and coordinate research infrastructures in the field of life sciences. And that basically means that the HiLIFE operations, even though what we need to keep here in mind is that the coordination of these LSRIs and also this funding which is coming throughout this research infrastructure assessment is only a portion that keeps these infrastructures running. So it's not so much maybe the university leadership where the actual negotiations, how this will be developed, is conducted. It's a bit more towards the faculty level, since the faculties are also having quite a lot of the financial responsibilities to keep these running, since they are, for example, paying the rents and conducting these larger equipment purchases, where the part of the funding or the 70% of the funding is coming from the Research Council of Finland, but this 30% is coming from the host units. So it's more like discussing towards that direction than I would say that university leadership in that sense is relatively happy how HiLIFE is organizing these and also conducting, for example, these evaluations and developing these things. But the financial burden is divided, and that's of course something that the HiLIFE cannot just do whatever it wishes, since there are these commitments coming from the faculties.
So then is the support in a sense decided in a way that that the core facility has been very effective, and then you see that okay, we need to support this this year more perhaps, or is it in a way also that you kind of think what are the real topics in the need? I mean, if something is like really in the beginning of development, how to decide like, oh, we now want this to be as a core facility at some point?
Well, if something wants to be a core facility, for example, or want to go into this path to develop to be as a core facility, it of course needs to come from the certain starting point from the research group, etc. But now, for example, this newest evaluation what we had, this evaluation group also brought out ideas that how or they are giving of course this kind of a discussion is ongoing all the time inside the LSRIs, but there also came like ideas that this could be a hot topic in a 2 years or a 5 year scale, and that's the one thing. And then there are now, for example, now there were applicants that were applying to become a first time a platform. So they basically bring their idea how these operations would work, what they think is the customers or the researchers who would be using it. How is that concept developed? For example, where do they see that how being supported LSRI would benefit the whole University of Helsinki? And now, based on these discussions, for example, it might be that this we will change our currently 16 platform organization to be more of these platforms. So there is in this RIA is just for that also the new ideas may come up and they might get funded in the end.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the question and for the answer. Is there any other person who would like to ask something? I don't see, I don't hear. So I think thank you very much once more, Harri. And I think we can move to the next presentation. And here we have Maria. So Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So hello on my behalf also. I will try to share my screen. Okay, is it now looking okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so now I was given the task to kind of zoom into one specific life science research infrastructure. And I'm using here as the example, the light microscopy unit, which is a very mature core facility. It is located in Institute of Biotechnology, so one of these operative units of HiLIFE that Harri was mentioning. And we are also like physically located on the Viki campus, which is the life science campus of the University of Helsinki. And so, as I said, LMU is a very mature core facility, so it has been a core facility essentially for 20 years already, and I have been leading it since 2007. So we are an open access core facility. And as Marko already mentioned, it doesn't mean that anyone can just turn up and start using our microscopes. But here the open access means that we are open to all academic and non-academic users, both from Finland and also international users. So I think that this is an important definition to keep in mind when talking about the open access concept and core facilities. And our main mode of operation is that we are so-called walk-in facility. So we maintain a large set of different types of microscopes, and then we train the users to use them independently for their research questions. So again, walk-in doesn't mean that you just walk in literally, but it means that once you are trained and you get access, then you can use the microscopes independently. But then, of course, we always provide support from the start of the experiments on how you design, for example, the samples, and then finally to image analysis. And I will come back to this a bit later. We also have collaborations on more complex imaging projects, for example, if our users want to develop new imaging modalities and so forth. We also provide data storage, and I will come back to this also. And then we have also cell culture facilities, because we have users coming, for example, from foreign universities, and then they also need facilities to prepare their samples. So we serve about a bit over 200 users from 75 different research groups annually, and our users produce about 35 publications using our instruments also annually. And as both Harri and Marko mentioned, we have these different levels of networks in the research infrastructure field. And our light microscopy unit is part of the Helsinki Bioimaging, which is a HiLIFE platform. We are part of the Biocenter Finland bioimaging platform, so we are also nationally networked. And then we are also part of the Eurobioimaging ESRI. And these networks are important for our functions on many different levels. So first of all, they are important when we apply funding to run the core facility, and I will come back to this later. But then they are, of course, important in how we develop our services according to common principles. And then also they link us to the kind of what is the state of the art in imaging, for example, in Europe via this Eurobioimaging network. So these are very significant on many different levels in running a core facility, these different types of networks. So in light microscopy unit, we have a full-time personnel of 4 in addition to myself. So my duty is basically to represent light microscopy unit in these different networks and to obtain funding. And I'm also the supervisor of the personnel. And the rest, as I mentioned, they are full-time personnel who are all on permanent contracts, which I think it's very important to keep kind of the long-term perspective of the core facility running. So Kimmo is in charge of the daily running of the operations, and we always joke that our division of task is that I will get the funding and Kimmo will spend it. And then Harri, Mika, and Marko all have their different technical specialities within the unit, because as you will soon see, we cover a very wide range of imaging techniques, which some of them are very demanding. So the boys all have their different specialities on how they can best then help our users. So we try to have as comprehensive website as possible, where the users can find essentially all information that they need in order to start using our services. So we can be found, for example, from the HiLIFE platform pages that Harri just mentioned. And there we have sections that cover essentially how to become a user, what kind of techniques we have available, and all kinds of things. And I think maybe the most important part there is our LMU user fees and the policy, because that states basically the guidelines on how we operate and what is expected from us and what is expected from our users. And as was mentioned by Tiina, this how you present the core facilities in different and even within our university, that varies quite a lot, and this is certainly something that we try to also, for example, in HiLIFE, to somehow harmonize so that the findability of the research infrastructures would be as good as possible. So as I mentioned, so we are located on the Viki campus, which is the life science campus, and there is a lot of very interesting but very variable research going on. And that is, on one hand, it's very great for us because people want to put all kinds of weird things onto our microscopes. But it is also a challenge because it means that we have to maintain a really wide variety of set of microscopes so that we can best basically support the varied science that our users want to do. So the samples that we get to our microscopes, they really vary from nanomaterials to cells, tissues, and small organisms. They can be fixed or they can be live. And people want to study different kinds of processes, from looking at, for example, the localization of specific proteins to their dynamics, so how they move within the sample. They might want to study the interactions between different components in the sample, for example, interactions between proteins with lipids or other proteins, or they want to study some cellular activities, so for example, metabolic sensors. So we essentially have a wide variety of techniques available, so a really vast toolbox to study different processes. And in microscopy, we always like to talk about the different scales of what can be imaged. So our techniques go all the way from kind of a nanometer resolution to then larger, for example, model organisms that can be a millimeter sized. This is another way of showing the toolbox that we have. So we have 13 different imaging systems that then cover kind of the very basic imaging modalities, which are like wide field fluorescence microscopy and confocal imaging, to then quite advanced techniques such as super resolution microscopy and light sheet microscopy. So imaging is not only pretty pictures, it is of course also pretty pictures, definitely. And this is one of the reasons why I still love microscopy, is that you just get to see so beautiful things under microscope. But it's a very quantitative technique these days, and it also produces a lot of data. So we have some microscopes that can easily spill out several terabytes of imaging data every day. So obviously we need to have systems on how we manage this large amount of data. So we have a dedicated disk space, and we also have very explicit data management policy that dictates who is responsible of the data and how. And this is also something that we are working on with HiLIFE to also harmonize these practices across the whole life science field at the University of Helsinki. And so if you nowadays want to publish a paper with microscopy, you can not only show the pretty pictures, but you need to get some numbers out. And this is also something that we help with. So the image analysis, it's an essential part of any modern microscopy experiment these days. So we provide not only software, but then actual workstations and virtual workstations where our users can then analyze and extract quantitative data from the pretty pictures. And this is really a really important part of our services these days, and it becomes even more important every day. So this is about our funding. So this is shown a bit similarly as Harri showed it in general for a life science research infrastructure. So obviously we need to have space where we put our microscopes, and our host institute, which is the Institute of Biotechnology, covers that cost. Then obviously microscopy in general, it's quite equipment intensive. And as you saw, we have 13 imaging systems, and they need to be constantly updated. So the microscopes are developing at really fast pace. So we need constantly to apply for upgrading to our instruments so that we can provide our users with the state-of-the-art technologies. And our main funding source for the equipment funding is because these are usually quite expensive, so between half a million and $1 million per microscope. So usually we apply funding via the Research Council of Finland, this FERI funding that Harri also mentioned. And here the Eurobioimaging ESRI network becomes important because we apply this equipment funding via our Finnish Eurobioimaging network. And as Harri mentioned, so if we are lucky and we get funding from Research Council of Finland, our host institute still needs to chip in for the 30% of the purchase price. So you can understand that if a microscope costs 1 million, then our host institute needs to put in 300,000 for the microscope, which means that our host institute really needs to be financially committed to our facility. So it's not only about the equipment, we also need the personnel who need to be able to operate this. So as I mentioned, some of these are very demanding techniques, so we really need top-notch people to run this. And therefore the salary costs are equally important as the equipment costs, especially in microscopy. And as Harri mentioned, so the HiLIFE research infrastructure assessment is giving out some of the salary funding. And here becomes important our local network. So this Helsinki Bioimaging, which is a HiLIFE platform, because we apply through the HiLIFE RIAS application via this local network. And then, so with user fees, we gather about 150,000 per year as user fees, and there we cover all the maintenance costs of the microscopes and all the reagents costs. These are not very big for microscopy in general, but then we also cover 1.5 salaries from our user fees. And at our university, so we have pricing guidelines on how we are supposed to calculate our prices. So we have the internal prices. So this is for users from the University of Helsinki. And there we can only put direct costs, and there shouldn't be any profit or overheads. So there is no, the aim is that we are not making any profit from our internal users. For the external users, then into the prices are calculated both direct and indirect costs. There is also overheads, and then there is some profit margin. And all together, so we operate with about 1 million euro budget annually. And as you can see, part of the budget or the funding comes from this kind of a competitive resources, so from the Research Council of Finland or via the HiLIFE research infrastructure assessment. And there the networks were important. And this is something that I think about constantly on how we can keep up this funding for our unit. Finally, this is my final slide. So our main aim at the light microscopy unit is that our users will get best possible results from their microscopy experiments. And we try to basically facilitate this on several different levels. So first of all, we are working very heavily, for example, with our local graduate school in organizing different types of courses in microscopy, both theoretical lecture courses, but then also practical courses, not only on microscopy, but also image analysis and even statistics. So we try to somehow educate our potential users already before they actually contact us and become our users then eventually. Then how you then actually get access to the microscopes. So as I said, we are open access and walk-in, but it doesn't mean that you literally do this. So all our new users need to submit a project form via this Open Iris system, which is a general system that we use for user management across our platform. And there they need to basically state what is the scientific question that they hope to answer with our microscope, what is the sample, and also how will the data be analyzed. And in addition, they need to provide some administrative data, and including billing details. Then once the users have submitted this form, they actually meet with the LMU staff to discuss the details. So for example, with the sample in mind, what would be the best microscope that they could use for their specific experiment? And with this system, we try to catch kind of a very simple mistakes that, for example, that the user might want to use a wrong fluorophore that we simply cannot image with our microscopes. Then after this project form and the initial meeting, then the user is arranged a training session on the specific microscope that is deemed to be perfect for this experiment. And then they get one or few training sessions, and then we ensure that they actually know how to operate the microscope. And then they get the ability to book the microscopes independently via the system. So they can then freely design when they actually want to come and use our microscopes. But then, of course, I mean, we have on kind of office hours, there is always people available to then help with acute needs on the microscopes. The project form that is submitted, it's valid for 1 year. And then the user always needs to submit a new project form. This is because, I mean, sometimes the project changes, and if the project doesn't change, then certainly some of the billing details will, and these need to be updated regularly. And in general, what I think is one of the most important things in running a successful core facility is that you need to have a good and open communication between the research infrastructure and the user. Because the more you talk to each other, so the more the user talks to the core facility, the more the user actually usually gets out of the core facility, so that you get the best possible support for your project. But it also works the other way around. So the users are usually the ones that know what is the state of the art in the field, their specific field. And from there, we can, as a core facility, get ideas on how or what kind of new things we could perhaps implement. And therefore, we also run our own user surveys. So HiLIFE has the general user surveys for all of the platforms, but we also try to have our own user surveys where we are specifically asking the users about kind of things that are specific to our facility. And for example, we always ask them feedback on when we get, or when we are lucky to get some Research Council of Finland funding on what we actually should buy with the funding. And we always get very, very good suggestions, and these help us then making the decisions. And this was everything that I wanted to tell you about how to operate a specific LSRI, and I'm happy to take any questions. And maybe to also mention that I also operate at the HiLIFE level, so I can also answer questions that relate to how HiLIFE is managing the LSRIs in general.
Thank you very much, Maria. So now time for questions from the audience. Do we have any?
I have one. Thank you
So,
again. Thank you again for a very, very nice overview how a core facility should do the things. I had this question in mind that you said that you are organizing courses. Is these courses kind of short courses to the potential users, or are you also organizing, let's say, major lectures at university level where also students get some points and kind of do the schoolwork in way studying these microscope things?
Yeah, so all of our courses are actually embedded in the different curriculums. And one of our major courses, it's a lecture course, which is, I think the title is Imaging Technologies in Biosciences. So that is officially organized by our local graduate school or program, the Integrative Life Sciences, but it is open to everyone. So we always have also master's level students there. So, and the students, they get points. And that is a really general level lecture course. It starts from a very basic about what is light, and then it ends with very specific technologies like super resolution microscopy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? I don't see, I don't hear. Personally, I feel that it was very, very fruitful, like with a lot of information and knowledge that definitely we will use very soon in upcoming future. And I believe that with some of colleagues from our OH Boost Estonian team, we will come back to this recording definitely, because there is a lot of details and information that will be helpful for us to work with this topic. So huge thanks from our side to all of our wonderful speakers, to Tiina, Maria, Harri and Marko, and also big thank you to you, Topi, for organizing this event and for choosing the best experts that could be to share their expertise and knowledge with us. And thank you to all the participants for joining us today. The next events are designed and will come soon, so you can check our website ohboost.eu to learn more what we are planning. And yes, thank you for today. Have a nice day. I hope that this winter will really finish soon and spring will come and you will not have to deal with the snow, neither in Finland nor in Estonia, as we are quite close. So thank you very much for this webinar, and see you soon on the next events in OH Boost project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.